Welcome to our Wednesday afternoon study group. We have been holding these Wednesday afternoon get-togethers now for close to 3 decades, that is, but we've been nonstop ever since the COVID had hit our country and our world. We've just gone continuously through with Zoom. We're going to take a short break after today, not too long. We're finishing today our spring semester, and I'll notify you when we'll start up our summer semester and then get right into our fall semester. So just stay tuned for an email that will tell you when we'll start up again. But today, again, I'd like to focus on the subject of Israel. Before I do, today's class is dedicated in honor of a refuah shalema for Nachman ben Esther Dina. He should have a complete and speedy recovery and live a very long, happy, and healthy life. I'd like to begin with a story of the Alter Rebbe. It was Erev Yom Kippur in a small Russian town, and the local Jewish innkeeper and his family, including 5 little children, they were rounded up and thrown into prison by the Parts. The Parts was the powerful landlord, and they had rights to incarcerate people. And the Parts claimed that this family owed him 300 rubles in back rent. One of the Hasidim of the Alter Rebbe, his name was Rabbi Shmuel Munkes. He was a very close Hasid of the Alter Rebbe, and the Alter Rebbe says to Rabbi Shmuel, you have to do what you can to rescue this Jewish family and somehow find the money, collect the money, raise the money. We have to get him out before Yom Kippur. So Rabbi Shmuel goes door to door, and he's only able to collect a kopek here, a kopek there, which was pennies. And in despair, he realizes that at this rate, it's going to take weeks, even months, to collect the entire 300 rubles. How can he deal with the idea of get him out before Yom Kippur and then go Sukkot and then Simchas Torah, and this family and their children are going to be in this dark, dreary prison? Rabbi Shmuel won't give up. He continues his drive, and he goes to the next townlet to try his luck there. But the only place where there seemed to be some action going on in that city was in the tavern, in the bar. He looks inside the bar, and he sees these brutish individuals. They're drinking, they're gambling, they're laughing. He says, well, maybe someone there is going to have some rahmanis, some mercy. The sight of this chassid walking into the bar got everyone's attention. And he explains right away, as everyone stops what they're doing to turn and look at what's this guy doing here. He says, look, I'm not here to drink and I'm not here to gamble. I'm on a mission of compassion and mercy. Is there anyone here that would like to do a good deed and help me raise 300 rubles? And he explains, there's this nice family in prison, they owe back rent, and I got to get him out. At first, all he got was a bunch of laughs. This guy thinks he's going to raise money from us. But then one of the gamblers spoke up, and he says, you see this vodka? It's 190 proof vodka. It's the strongest vodka they got here. I will give you 100 rubles if you drink this glass filled with this vodka in one gulp. You down it, 100 rubles. And all the other gamblers roared with laughter, some excitement in the room. They're having some fun. Everyone's screaming, take the deal, take the deal. Munkes is thinking to himself, one drop of that stuff can set your whole insides on fire, let alone your head. Tonight is Kol Nidre. If I drink that full cup, it's going to ruin my Yom Kippur. But then again, 100 rubles is 1/3 of the way to saving a family. So amidst the cheering of the gamblers, Reb Shmuel recites the blessing, and he downs the entire glass, and he collects the 100 rubles. He now stumbles to the next table, and he says, you see, your friend over there just gave me 100 rubles to save a family from captivity. Would you like to do the same? And the response was, do the same? We'll do the same if you do the same. Another glass fill, another 100 rubles. Take the deal, take the deal. Munkes thinks, there's no way I can drink anymore. But if I get another 100 rubles, I'm 2/3 of the way there. All right, I'll do it. He drinks it, he downs it. 200 rubles. He thinks he's going to die. His head is spinning. Every part of his body, he can't even feel anymore. He wobbles to a third table, same offer, Oh no, please just give the charity. Don't make me drink it. It's soon the Day of Atonement for us. I need to pray. I need to concentrate. Don't make me do it. That's the deal. They're having a good time with him. He thinks if I do it, if I survive it, that gives me 300 rubles. I'm able to get this family out. And so he does it. He drinks the third cup. He now has 300 rubles. He's got to get from the bar to the house of the parrots. It wasn't easy. And he makes his way, and he stumbles his way, and he crawls part of the way, but he makes his way to the house of the parrots, counts out 300 rubles, and the family is released just in time for Yom Kippur. They don't stop thanking him. Thank you, you saved our lives. You saved our lives. They're a little bit surprised by the smell of alcohol coming from this chassid of the Alter Rebbe, but still so very much appreciative. Munke says, you better rush. It's almost Yom Kippur. You better rush. And they run off. Munkus, on the other hand, had a problem because he could barely walk. Every step was a major effort. And so he stumbled and took a nap for a few minutes, woke up, took another step, took another crawl, and another stumble. Let's move now back to the Alter Rebbe's synagogue. It's crowded. It's Kol Nidre night. Everyone came from far and near to be with the Rebbe for Yom Kippur. The time arrives for the cantor to begin the Kol Nidre prayer. The room is quiet. The cantor gets up and begins the Kol Nidre Ve'asorei. And as he begins with the most beautiful melody, the door bursts open. And in walks Munkis. And Munkis is singing away, yada da da da, hey! His clothes are filthy. His face is red. He smells from alcohol. And he's dancing away. The crowd saying, shh, what happened to Munkus? He's gone mad. Quiet him down. It's Yom Kippur. It's Kol Nidre. What's he doing drinking? Munkus gets a view of the synagogue. And you know, by Kol Nidre, the Torahs are taken out of the ark and they're given to honorable people to hold. Munkus sees the Torah. He grabs one of the Torahs away from the fellow that was holding it, and he begins to dance around the bima, singing lively melodies, just jumping for joy, enjoying the moment. The congregation is aghast. What's the matter with Munkus? It's Yom Kippur. And the people start chasing him, want to take the Torah away from him, give the Torah back to the cantor who's doing the Kol Nidre. Everyone is yelling. The shul is in uproar. Quiet Munkus down. Chase him out of the shul. And all of a sudden, the Alter Rebbe turns around. And the Alter Rebbe turns around and gets quiet very fast. And he says to this congregation, let him be. Let him do what he's doing. Leave him alone. Don't stop him. Don't interfere with him. You see, we're all holding by Yom Kippur now. But Munkus, he's holding by Simchas Torah. He's surpassed Yom Kippur. He's beyond it. And the Rebbe explained that the entire period of the high holidays is like climbing a spiritual ladder. And the month of El gets us ready for Rosh Hashanah, and Rosh Hashanah gets us ready for the 10 days of repentance, and the 10 days of repentance get us ready for Yom Kippur, which then sets the stage for Sukkot, and all culminating in Simchat Torah and the joy of the Torah and the joy of the holiday of Simchas Torah. Today, our friend Rab Shmuel gave up his Yom Kippur to help a family in crisis. But you know what else he did today? He skipped all the levels of the ladder and he went straight to Simchat Torah. So we may have to say Kol Nidre. Munkus, he could just dance. There are times, there are opportunities, and there are moments when we're called upon to go beyond the norm, to sacrifice ourselves for a higher calling. And when we do this, we're blessed with finding shortcuts up the ladder of our own pursuits. And today, this month, these few weeks, that calling is our outspoken support for Israel. That's the calling of the day. That's where we are needed now more than ever before. Because as you can see from the tumult out there, especially in social media, how our enemies want to use this as an opportunity to bash Israel, apartheid state. I mean, the most ridiculous things that you can be saying. apartheid state when Arabs are treated the best in Israel better than any Arab country. I'm not going to respond to those things today. You can find those responses. I'm merely saying that today, this has to be on our minds. How we can show our support for Eretz Yisrael, for the people, for the soldiers, for the IDF, for the land. So I want to talk about it today. I have had the good fortune over the years to lead many study group tours of Israel. In our study group tours of Israel, we travel the land with a Chumash in hand, with the Bible in hand, and we study the texts of the Torah at the site where the narrative took place. It's a unique way of studying from the Torah, is to actually be there on the ground in the places that we can, and we're studying the text literally at the site where it happened. The Torah comes alive. And these have been very powerful study group trips of Israel. We've done quite a few of them over the years. On the side note, I would very, very much love to do another tour of Israel sometime this year, now that COVID is passing away from us, leaving us hopefully for good. Israel has opened up. And so if there's people out there that are interested in joining me for either a study group tour of Israel or a solidarity group tour of Israel, just drop me an email. I don't have any details yet. I'm just curious to know if there's a following of people that are interested. Don't put it up here on the chat. Yes, women can join. It's open for men, women, and children. Just drop me an email that you would be interested, so that if I start putting some ideas together, I'll keep you informed. But anyway, the trip that I took in December of 2002 was different than all the other prior trips. It wasn't the same. It wasn't a study group tour of Israel. The honor that I had at that time was to lead a solidarity mission to Israel. Now, I had seen the land of Israel through the eyes of a tourist. I've seen it through the eyes of a visitor. I've seen it through the eyes of a group leader numerous times. And every trip to Israel is meaningful. Every trip to Israel is inspirational. However, the mission of December of 2002 was significantly different. It was a different trip. And I'm sure some of you that are on perhaps were with me at the time and you will remember it. December 2002 was the height of the Intifada. During that time, tourism came to a complete halt. Day after day, we heard of tragic news of yet another suicide attack. Remember that period of time? Bus bombing, restaurant bombing, pizza shop bombing. It was constant. And so we organized a mission to tell the people of Israel that our thoughts were with them every day and night. It was a mission to comfort the bereaved and share in their pain. It was a mission to visit with those that were wounded physically and emotionally by the horrors of years of terrorism. On one of our stops, we visited an active military base on the Lebanese border. And we asked the leading officer, his name was Yaron, if there was anything we could do for them. And he told us that two of his officers came from very poor families without fathers, and that they were the breadwinners of their families, and now they have been called up on extended duty and they were worried about their families. Immediately, the 30, 40 of us that went on this mission, we put together a decent collection and we gave it to them. It was this true kinship. We cared deeply about our men and women, our boys and girls that are fighting to defend our land. And there was this bond that we felt, our family. One of the members of our group helped raise over $65,000 before we left to distribute directly to families in need. And I remember he tried picking up a few Hebrew words here and there. He generally didn't speak Hebrew. And we're making our way back onto the bus from visiting this army base. And we were all very emotional. It was an emotional visit. The entire trip was all emotional. You needed to take Kleenex with you, tissues with you, wherever you went, because you were constantly crying. And Tom turns around and he wants to say goodbye to the soldiers. And he yells out, "You are all my gibor." He wanted the word hero in Ivrit. So someone told him the word gibor, which means really strong, but it can be used as a hero. So he yells out, "You are all my Gibor. You're all my heroes." And the soldiers were so moved by this outburst of pure emotion, this love and admiration for them. It was so deep and so pure and so real. So the soldiers yelled back to us, "Atem Giborim, you're our heroes." And before you knew it, we were all back off the bus, dancing together with the soldiers, singing Am Yisrael Chai. When we boarded the bus again, Yaron, the individual in charge of that base, came on the bus. He wanted to say goodbye. Yaron served as a platoon commander in the Yom Kippur War. So understand his background. He's a military man. He's a strong man. And when he came on the bus to say farewell, he couldn't finish the words and he broke down crying. This was a 50-year-old major who commanded tanks on the battlefield, and yet he broke down in tears with us. And he said, "Our young men and women who serve in the army need so much to hear words of support and solidarity from American Jewry. You have no idea what you're doing for them." We visited dozens of families that lost loved ones. And although we never met them before, we mourned as if it was our very own families. The tears of a parent crying over the loss of a child ripped through our hearts and our souls. And the discussion wasn't about politics or policies. It was about love. It was about family. And I've never forgotten the faces of these families. The mother's anguish, the father's anguish, the photos they showed me of their loved ones. I remember the days before we left to Israel, there was a bus attack in a poor neighborhood in Israel called Kiryat Menachem, a school bus of children. And many families in this small neighborhood lost sons and daughters, children. And so when we were there, it was still just the ending of Shiva for all these homes. And so, no, this wasn't one of those trips to Israel of vacations, of going to the beach and shopping in Tel Aviv. This was a heavy mission. We literally went door to door, visiting homes of Shiva in Kiryat Menachem, from one home, from one apartment building to the next. I'll never forget Leah Zinu talking about her 22-year-old daughter, Dikla, who was murdered on November 21st, 2002. I still remember it was bus number 20. She showed us her daughter's bedroom. It was left exactly the way it was the morning her daughter left the house. And every day since the attack, her younger sister would write Dikla a letter and place it with a flower on her sister's desk. I'll never forget Rina Chamami. Rina Chamami met us in Netanya. She met us in the Park Hotel in Netanya. Some of you may remember the Park Hotel in Netanya was the scene of a horrific Passover massacre, March 27th, 2002. Rina lost her husband, Ami, in that attack. And she was then, when we met her, raising 6 children alone. And she insisted on meeting us in the Park Hotel on the very floor where she was with her husband that Pesach night at that Seder. When you visit, the victims are no longer just names of strangers or statistics that flash across a television screen on the nightly news programs. They're real. They're real people. Their children and their fathers and their mothers and their zaydis and their bubbies who left behind orphans and widows and torn lives. They had lives that touched thousands. And now we became part of their lives. We befriended these families, embraced and cried and promised that their loved ones will never be forgotten. It's more than just writing a check. It's about connecting. It's about understanding and appreciating what Eretz Yisrael means to us and why it's so vital that we make it part and parcel of our lives. Since 1948, there have been over 130 countries admitted into the United Nations. Not one country, not a single country on that list could match the economic growth, the progress, the quality of life, the technology, the military development, the satellites, the farming, like Israel. Israel leads in every single category of any nation admitted to the United Nations since 1948. Compare Israel to Cameroon and to Tunisia and to Algeria and to Bangladesh. Out of a wilderness, we built farms and forests. In the place of what was a totalitarian state from which we came, we built a democratic society, the only democratic society in the entire Middle East. Let them talk about freedom. 22 Arab countries do not match the democracy and the freedom that Israel has displayed to the world. And in the early days of Israel, in the 48s and 49s and 51s, airlifts from Yemen and from Iraq and from Egypt and Tunisia and Morocco. Hundreds of thousands of Jews airlifted out of countries, Arab countries, Middle Eastern countries, Muslim countries, bringing them home to the promised land. This is their home. And then the old Soviet empire collapses and another million Jews enter into Eretz Yisrael. When Isaiah talks about the wings of eagles, said thousands of years ago that there will be a day that wings of eagles will fly and Jews will come from all corners of the world. This generation didn't just read about the prophecies of Jews traveling on the wings of eagles. We didn't just study about it. We saw them with our very own eyes. We saw these wings of eagles carry our brethren from all corners of the world to our homeland. During the operation that took Jews from the old Soviet Union, the planes were landing a few minutes apart from each other. Israel is different than any country. For us, it's like one big Jewish family. And in every Jewish family, you don't always get along, but your family. It's like a symphony orchestra. Everyone plays a different instrument, not all the same, and yet together they play the most beautiful, uplifting, inspiring music in the world. I heard this story about this woman in Jerusalem. She gave birth to her 10th child. That's not an oddity in Jerusalem. It was a boy, and the bris was going to take place on Shabbos. And in the spirit of friendship, friends came over on Thursday to help prepare. One of the friends asks the mother of the newborn, was asked by the mother of the newborn to go to a relative's home a few blocks away to pick up food that she was preparing for the Brit. She asked, what can I do to help? And the mom says, I have a relative, she's preparing food, there's the address, can you go pick it up for me? She says, sure. She knocks on the door, she explains that she's there to pick up food for the bris. The woman answers the door, very sweet, invites her in, asks her if she'd like to have a cup of tea. While she waits, I just have to package it up. She has her cup of tea, she has some biscuits, everything is being packed up, and she's sent with kugels and chicken and fish and baked goods. And as she's leaving, the woman who's doing the pickup says, so I'll see you at the bris. To which the woman says, whose bris? Whose bris is it? So she's confused. What do you mean whose bris it is? I came to this address to pick up, you were preparing your related. And she says, no, it's the wrong address. So what am I doing with all this food? You came to my door. You said you need food for a bris. I'm giving you food for a bris. It's the food we prepare for Shabbos. But if there's a bris, they need it more than us. It's a family. We argue a lot, but it's a family. We waited 2,000 years for this. Remember years ago, the fighting in Jenin that made a lot of noise all over the world. So the Rishon LeZion, the chief Sephardic of Israel, received at that time not emails, it was a fax. Remember, this used to be something called a fax machine before emails and text messages. He got a fax from the commander of the Jenin operation with an emergency halachic question. He needed a question answered of Jewish law. And this is what the commander wrote to the chief rabbi, that he was assigning some of his men for a very dangerous door-to-door mission in Jenin. The reservists were the older men in the unit, right? They're the ones that served their time, they're back to their family life and their business, but when they need to get called up, they're on reserve. And at that time, they called up the reserves. So the reservists are the older folks. They insisted that they be sent because it's a dangerous mission. We're more experienced. We've dealt with door-to-door combat before. Besides the young ones, they have their whole lives ahead of them. They're 18 years old. Let them live. The regular soldiers, the young draftees, responded by saying, no, they're just reservists. And besides, they have wives and children back home. We should go. We've been training longer. They just came on reserve now. And they're having this debate, and the commander says, I don't know what to do. I don't know who's right. So he sends this fax to the chief rabbi, Sephardic chief rabbi of Israel. The Sephardic chief rabbi says when he gets this fax, his hands began to shake. The self-sacrifice of the Jew, each one caring about the other. You have your whole life to live, let us go. No, you have wives and children, let us go. He didn't know how to answer. He said, I did the best thing I could. I went straight to the kotel, I went straight to the wall. I folded the letter, I put the letter in the wall, and I said, God, you answer them. Israel, we've waited 2,000 years for this. On one of our trips, I had a tour guide, Jonathan Deitch. I know Jonathan every once in a while tunes into my talks from Israel. Jonathan, if you're listening, we haven't forgotten you. So he was one of our tour guides. He was showing our group all the beautiful scenery, the particular part of Israel, the mountains, the trees, the streams. And he said this, and I haven't forgotten. You see, Jonathan, I was listening. He said, I know you guys come from California. And in California, you also have beautiful scenery. And you also have beautiful mountains. And you have beautiful valleys. And you have beautiful streams. But there's a big difference. And with a big smile and a face beaming with pride, he points his finger at the land and he says, Aval zeh shalanu. But this is ours. This is ours. This is not just a beautiful land. This is our land. It's our Jewish homeland. The pulse of Am Yisrael beats in those hills. My friends, Israel is a very special place. We all know that. Israel is the homeland of the Jewish people. We know that too. But we need to be able to articulate to ourselves and to others just what makes it so special. Is it that we can finally be a nation amongst all other nations with a country and a flag and a parliament and a prime minister, maybe, who knows, of our own? They elected a new president this morning. I'm still not sure yet on the prime minister. It's any minute now that we'll find out. But is it just so that we can have a government, that we can be like the other nations of the world? Nah. No one out there buys it. You know why they don't buy it? Because it's not true and they know it. Even if sometimes we don't seem to know it, don't get me wrong. Those are all nice things. They're beautiful things. That we have a parliament building and we have a president, we have a prime minister. But that's not what makes Israel so special and unique. When our claim to that land comes from our desire to be like everybody else, we disappoint the world and we disappoint God Almighty. Because he tells us in the Torah over and over that it's sacred land, that it's the land of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and Sarah and Rivka and Rachel and Leah and you and me. Eretz Asher Einei Hashem Elokecha Ba, the verse that we just read last week in Deuteronomy, the land in which I, God, am most present, the land that I keep my constant watch from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. It's God's promised land to us. That's what makes it special. It's our land. It's an inheritance given to each and every single Jew. It's holy land. It's sacred land. It's the promised land. You're familiar, I'm sure, with the actor Kirk Douglas. Kirk Douglas writes in his book, Climbing the Mountain, that when he visited Israel, he was treated like a dignitary and given an official tour that like heads of states get. The Israeli government arranged that Kirk Douglas has to get the royal treatment They wanted to show him the real beauty of Jerusalem. So he writes in his book, the first stop on my VIP tour was the Kinyan Malka Mall, a shopping mall, because the government was so proud that their country finally built a big mall. It was right when they built it. It was a big accomplishment for them. You're used to having your Oaks Mall and this mall and that mall. They didn't have malls in Israel. And finally, they built a massive one in Israel, and they felt they needed to show it off. Look, we have made it. We have a mall. He writes in the book when he writes about it, truth of the matter is it meant nothing to me. It was a nice mall, but there's malls all over Los Angeles. Next, they took me to the biblical zoo. The biblical zoo has every cage, has a biblical verse telling me where that animal is mentioned in the Bible. Again, his commentary in his book. First, I hate zoos. Second, I don't really care much where it says each animal in the Bible. It was not inspiring to me. And finally, they took me on that first day to a new soccer stadium. They felt that's going to turn me on. And again, I've seen stadiums before, so that Israel built a soccer stadium. Nice, nice. Then came Friday, which was a free day, no sightseeing that day. Now, from the day that I arrived in Jerusalem, there was an envelope sitting on my desk in my hotel room, which I didn't pay any attention to. I was busy meeting with all these important people and going to malls and to zoos and to soccer fields. So finally, on this day off, I opened the envelope. And there was a note from a rabbi who lives in the old city of Jerusalem. And it read, Dear Mr. Douglas, as you are here in Israel, I would like to invite you to join our family for Shabbat dinner. I'm sure he didn't think he had a chance whatsoever that I would respond, but I'm there in my hotel room, and I'm thinking, malls, zoos, soccer stadiums, let me give this a try. Why not? So I picked up the phone. I called the rabbi and I says, the invitation real? Is it still on? He says, sure. I went. The old ancient city of Jerusalem. Wasn't a fancy house, nice, comfortable, but in the old city of Jerusalem. Not like the hotel ballroom I was in. It was a delicious meal. The rabbi spoke about the Torah portion. And then he sang songs. And through the window, I can see other houses. And I see through their window the same warm Shabbat candles. And I can hear the singing coming from their homes as well. They were happy songs. They were coming from all different apartments at the same time. It felt good. It felt right. It felt perfect. Finally, that night, I felt that I had come home. That this was the Israel that I've been waiting for. See, coming home was not the mall or the stadium. The ultimate coming home for a Jew is to be able to live like Israel is the land of Israel under the proud watch of the God of Israel. I mentioned the name Tom before. He was on my solidarity mission. He also came on a different trip that we went together with his entire family. And he took as well, his brother came, Tom's brother came, he took his parents, Don and Linda came. And the first day of any trip that I take, we go right to the kotel. We go right to the wall. We welcome, our welcome to Israel is standing by the Kotel HaMaravi. So we're at the wall and everyone's doing their thing. Some go right up to the wall, some kiss the wall, some are standing back taking in the picture, some are looking around. And I notice Tom's brother Bob is right up at the wall and he's crying. Tom's father, Don, comes up to me and he's a bit surprised. He says, I don't get it. This is very strange. My son, Tom, he's the religious one in the family. He's the observant one, right? He's the one that goes to shul every Shabbat. Now he goes every morning as well. He's very active in the community. But Bob's not active in Jewish practice. So why is he standing up at a wall crying his heart out? It's just a wall. It's just bricks. What does it mean to him? So I said, it's a very long story. He said, how long? I said, 3,000 years long. Anyway, fast forward, the last day of the tour. What do I do before we go to the airport? I do the same thing. We go back to the hotel for our last visit to the wall. I look up and what do I see? I see Don, the father, the guy who thought he was a skeptic himself, with his face right up against the wall. And he's crying streams of tears. You see, beyond religious observance, beyond Jewish practice, beyond knowledge or understanding, the bond to Israel is like the bond to God himself. And it belongs equally to each and every single Jew, religious or not religious, observance or not observant, believer or not believer. There's no distinctions. We are all children of the same Father, and that's the bond we have to Israel. And that's what came bursting to the surface and what jolted us the last few weeks. Because when enemies of Israel send missiles into cities of Israel, they're not just attacking the cities of some sister democracy across the ocean. They're attacking you. They're attacking me. They're attacking my brothers and my sisters. They're attacking my parents. They're attacking my children. They're attacking every single Jew on the face of the earth. That's why we're jolted. The missile was headed for our home. It landed in our backyard, not someone else's, our backyard. The fact is, we don't like to fight. The Jewish people are described in the Talmud as being a nation of good nature, of refined, of compassionate, of benevolent people. That's the most prominent trait and characteristic of the Jew. We're soft, we're sensitive. We're an empathetic people. We feel other people's pain and suffering very deeply. And those are the greatest strengths of the Jewish people, because we're not comfortable being fighters. Beishonim, Rachmanim, Goim Lechasodim, we're refined and compassionate and benevolent. Those are our strengths. And we must never become hardened to where we lose those special qualities, God forbid. But at the same time, we must not allow our greatest strength to become our greatest weakness, our vulnerability. Because when compassion is misdirected and misapplied, it stops being compassion and it becomes cruelty. The enemies that attack us, whether it's Hamas or Hezbollah or Iran or Islamic Jihad, what exactly is it that they want? See, usually in a conventional war, the enemy has tangible objectives. It's either conquest of land, they want more land, they want resources that your country has, they want power over their neighbor, or they want money. Each side states its terms, and when they want their enemy to give up what they want, and when the enemy wants to surrender, they get the things they wanted. What is the objective of this enemy? What do they really want? What would satisfy these guys? What would it take for the attacks against our people to stop? And they don't make any secret of it. As I mentioned last week, it is stated clearly and openly in their charter. This is not a conflict over land. This is an existential struggle. It's the very existence of Israel that they want surrendered. In the words of Hezbollah's Secretary General, even if hundreds of years pass by, Israel's existence will continue to be an illegal existence. Or as stated in the Hamas charter, Israel will exist and continue to exist until Islam will obliterate it, just as it obliterated others before it. So indeed, as Jews, we abhor war. When there is a sworn enemy who challenges the very right of innocent people to live in peace and assaults the basic foundations of civilization, then war against this enemy is an act of peace. It's an act of compassion. It's an act of preserving life. Look, any fear-minded, sane, civilized person understands that when you are attacked, when your home is violated, when your children are stolen, you have an obligation to fight. Everyone understands that the most basic and fundamental rule of nationhood is that when your borders are breached, when your cities are bombed, when your citizens are killed, you better mount a vigorous defense if you want to continue to remain a standing nation. Those who dispute that are either fools or as in most cases, they're anti-Semites. But what I'm talking about is beyond our right. It's beyond our entitlement to defend ourselves. That goes without saying. What I'm talking about is that we as Jews need to be able to stand up tall and proud, unambiguously, unapologetically, unequivocally, and uncompromisingly, confidently, proudly, and firmly declare to the world, Zeh Shelanu. This is our land. And we make no excuses for it and no apologizing for it. We are there because we belong there. This is our land. And the more we understand it, the more we recognize it, and the more we internalize it, and are not afraid to proclaim it, the more those around us will understand and respect it. And let me take a moment here to pay tribute to the tzaddikim, to the holy and righteous warriors, the brave young soldiers of Tzahal, who put their lives on the line with such courage and bravery, with such love for the land, with such devotion like no other group of human beings on the face of this earth. They're not running away from fire, but we're always running into it to protect their brothers and sisters back home. A number of years ago, the Polish government held an event in which they celebrated the 85th anniversary of the Polish Air Force. This is not a Polish joke. It's real. And so this goes back some time, maybe a decade ago. It was going to be their 85th anniversary. They invited many countries, Israel among them, to send contingents of jets from their own air forces to participate in the festivities. As a precondition to their participation, however, the Israeli Air Force insisted that their contingent's itinerary must include a flyover by their F-15s over the Auschwitz-Birkenau concentration camps. Now, upon hearing this, the curators of the Auschwitz Museum objected. They said, no, the museum is a quiet place. We're not going to allow these loud, noisy military aircraft going over a very quiet place. It's inappropriate. It's disrespectful. It's a disturbance of the peace and quiet of this solemn place. The Israelis hung tough in their position, and the Poles relented. And on that incredible day, a contingent of Israeli F-15 jets, listen to this, each of them piloted by the children or grandchildren of Holocaust survivors, took off towards that sacred and sorrowful resting place of their parents and grandparents. In the cockpits, these crew members carried with them the names of all those recorded murdered in Auschwitz some 6 decades earlier. The jets, proudly displaying the blue Magen David, flew towards the concentration camps as slowly as possible, following the railroad tracks leading into the camp and crematoriums. And then just as they got right over where the gas chambers were, they peeled away with a loud roar and mighty screech. It wasn't a very quiet tribute to the millions who perished, nor was it meant to be. In the words of Israeli ambassador to Poland at that time, Shevach Weiss, who responded to the indignation and condemnation of those who were seeking to preserve the silence of Auschwitz, he said this quiet had to be disturbed, and it had to be disturbed by the screech of an Israeli F-15 jet. I am sure that as they flew over the graves and ashes of their parents and grandparents, they cried bitter tears. But amidst the tears, they laughed a roaring laugh. V'am Yisrael Chai. We survived. We're still here. Let me take you back to one of my study group trips. This trip has 45 of us. We're taking a walking tour of the old city on a Shabbos afternoon. Shabbos afternoon in the old city, many people are out walking. Elderly are sitting on the benches talking. For those of you familiar with the Ir Ha'atika, with the old city, you may remember there's a place called on the Chabad Street. There's actually a street in the old city called Chabad Street. This particular corner is near the Conejo, where you can look down some 50 feet from current street level, and you see what the archaeologists have uncovered. A wide open area, and you see the actual original street of Jerusalem before it was covered by many layers of earth and stone during the various stages of destruction and invasion and rebuilding. And they unearthed these huge columns that once stood on that street. And you can look down and you see it all by the Conejo. All week long, if you ever go there Sunday through Friday, the gates leading to the stairway that will take you down to that actual street level are locked. But on Shabbat, as I'm taking my group on this walking tour of the old city, the gate is open. And you look down and there are kids. They're playing ball on ancient ground of Jerusalem. That's where all the youth groups come and they meet and they go down the steps. They open the gate for them and they play ball over there. I'm taken in this scene and suddenly I feel overwhelmed by this sight. Not because it's nice to see Jews in Jerusalem on a bench on a Shabbos afternoon. Of course it's nice. Not because it's precious to see children playing ball together. Of course that's nice. I was overwhelmed because I reminded myself of a verse in the book of Zechariah, chapter 8, a prophecy recorded thousands of years ago. So says the Lord, I will return to Zion and I will dwell in the midst of Jerusalem. Old men and women shall yet sit in the streets of Jerusalem, and the streets of the city shall be filled with boys and girls playing in the streets. This was said thousands of years ago. There will yet be a day that Jerusalem will be back in Jewish hands, that old men and women will sit in the streets of Jerusalem, and that children will play on the streets of Jerusalem. I'm looking down at those ancient streets of Jerusalem, and there are Jewish children playing on a Shabbat afternoon in a free Israel, in an Israel that's not oppressed, in an Israel that's strong, in an Israel that's proud. Children were laughing and singing and playing on the streets of Jerusalem. If that's not a fulfillment of prophecy, what is prophecy? We see it with our open eyes. I'll conclude with this. In 1960, in a daring operation, the Israeli Mossad captured Adolf Eichmann, Yamach Shemoy, the architect of the Nazis' final solution, and they secretly transport him to Israel. And he stood trial in 1961 for his crimes, and he was executed. In May of 1962, I believe we just marked his anniversary this week of his execution. The months of the trial were very traumatic for the Holocaust survivors in Israel and around the world that were forced to relive their memories as this animal spent thousands of hours recounting the details of his inhumanity. Throughout the ordeal, there was a man who was charged with the task of guarding Eichmann and who ultimately carried out his execution. The identity of this Mossad agent was kept classified until his retirement in June of 2004. After his retirement, his name was released. Turns out he's a Yemenite Jew. He's a Yemenite observant Jew. Upon learning of his identity, the main TV station in Germany asked him for an interview. And they wanted to interview him about those years that he was guarding Eichmann. After much reluctance, the man agreed to be interviewed, but also on a condition. He insisted that the interview be conducted at 7 a.m. and at the Western Wall. So the German producers tried to explain that when we do an interview, it's in a studio. We can control sound, we can control noise, we can control lighting. You're doing it outdoors, and especially at a busy place, people coming, going, moving, it'll be a terrible distraction. The interview won't go over well. But the man said, do you want the interview or not? If you want it, 7 a.m. at the Kotel, that's where we're going to do it. And they gave in. Camera crew comes, they set up as best as they can control light and sound. And the man tells of the details of all those months with Eichmann under his charge, how layers of guarded others. So there were guards that were guarding other guards. Why? because everyone was afraid that someone was going to try to kill him. And they wanted the trial to be complete. So they did not want him executed by an individual. And so there was this whole security mechanism controlling that an Israeli soldier, an Israeli police officer, or a survivor of the Holocaust don't get to Eichmann before they kill him. He said it was so crazy that I needed to taste all food that was prepared for Eichmann. I needed to taste it first because they were afraid the chef was going to try to poison him. Anyway, he told in great detail what it was like. At the end of this fascinating interview, the Germans asked the Yemenite Jew one last question. They said, there'll be millions of people in Germany watching this historic interview. Why did you insist on being interviewed here at the Western Wall? Why not in the proper studio? And the man replied, just one generation ago, Germany tried to extinguish our nation. I wanted them all to see with their own eyes, from the heartbeat of the Jewish world, from Jerusalem, that we are alive and well, and that we will live on forever. Am Yisrael Chai, he says. In conclusion, in very practical terms, ladies and gentlemen, what can we do? What should we do for Eretz Yisrael? First, be engaged. When issues come up, speak up. Write to your congressman, write to your senator, write to the White House, write letters to the editor. Let our voices be heard. It makes a difference, and Israel needs all the friends it can get. Number two, plan on going there. Like I said, we've all been cooped up now for 14, 15 months. We're all thinking about at some point we're going to want to take a vacation, a cruise. Think Israel. Let's go to Israel. Take your family to Israel. Go as a group with your friends to Israel. If you've never been to Israel, go there and discover it. If you've already been there, go again and discover new and different dimensions that you never saw before. Your visit represents moral support as well as financial support for its economy. Beyond all that, let us begin a new chapter in terms of how we view this land and its connection to us. And it needs to be on a deeper, more profound level. Let's make it our responsibility to learn what is truly unique about this land that for thousands of years of history, every nation wanted it. Let's internalize the awareness that it is above all a spiritual place connected to every one of our souls. And let us share this with our friends, with our coworkers, with our spheres of influence, and make it part of our discussion. Because the more we understand it ourselves, the more we'll be able to articulate it and explain it to others. The more you learn about your Jewish heritage, the more you understand what Israel is really all about. One of the places that I always love to go in every trip is to the burial of Rachel. I won't get into the whole story why the burial of Rachel is so important. But in the prophecy about the burial of Rachel, there's this discussion that takes place between Rachel and God. And Rachel begs God to take care of her children, referring to all of us. And in this very powerful statement from God, God says to Rachel, to Mama Rachel, to our matriarch Rachel, God calls out to Rachel and says, it's time to stop crying, Rachel. It's time to wipe away the tears from your eyes. Because I give you my word, trust me on this. Vishavu vonim legvulam, your children are coming home. Your children are coming home spiritually, and before long, each and every single one of them will come back to Eretz Yisrael. The promise to Rachel is the promise to each and every single Jew that Mashiach will come, and it will come soon, and that every single one of us will have a home in our homeland of Eretz Yisrael, that God himself will wipe away the tears of exile, all the tears that have been mounted over thousands of years, and we will all indeed celebrate together with Abraham, together with Isaac, together with Jacob, together with Sarah, Rivka, Leah, and Rachel, together with Moses and Aaron, together with Elijah, together with the Lubavitcher Rebbe. We will celebrate the coming of Mashiach and we will celebrate in Yerushalayim, our eternal capital. May it happen speedily in our days. I want to wish everyone a wonderful week, a Shabbat Shalom. Next Wednesday evening, is our annual gala, but this time the gala is virtual. You'll be able to all watch it in every part of the world, 7 p.m. Pacific time, next Wednesday. You just have to go to chabadgala.com, and you'll be able to join us for a wonderful 2 hours of entertainment, of inspiration. It's going to be a great, great show. Please do join with me then. Thank you for joining me for our spring semester. For some of you, our winter semester. Some of you from the fall semester. Some for the last 27 years. Again, we'll be sending out an email telling you when we're going to restart again. Have a wonderful summer, everyone. Take care.